So Fuji recently released update 4 for the Fuji XT2, and it's got some fantastic new features, 2 or 3 that I'm really excited about. So F-Log to SD, that's awesome. I wish that was with the camera from the start, but you know it wasn't, and now it is. That's just great. Also 120p slow-mo, that's just great in itself as well. The thing I'm going to talk about today is the focus bracketing feature that they've set up now on the XT2, which is really good actually. I've just taken a few shots this morning with it and I've been quite impressed. So I've set this shot up here looking back towards the old ruins of the castle, and we've got some flowers in the foreground. Now I'm using the Fuji X-T2 at its widest 10mm, and this is an incredibly large depth of field from the flowers through to the castle, because I'm focused in quite close. The camera's positioned quite close to the flowers, so to get that depth of field wouldn't be possible. Even if your scene was maybe shorter than this, you know, shooting at f/22 can introduce problems in itself with lens diffraction, so that's something else to think about when you're deciding which aperture to use. Now for this scene there was also another area which was of concern to me, if you like, because the flowers were moving in the wind. Now I wanted to freeze that motion, I didn't want them moving at all, so I had 2 options. I could either reduce my aperture to bump the shutter speed up or increase my ISO. Now I don't really like to increase the high ISO too much because obviously we want a really crisp and clear image. So I kept the ISO at 350 for this shot, which was, you know, quite acceptable, and the aperture down to 7.1. Now obviously at 7.1 we can't get the full depth of field for the image, so this is where focus stacking comes in. So we've got into the bracketing menu and I chose 8 frames, an interval of 0 and steps of 5, and it seemed to work really well actually for my shot here. And I think you probably will need to play around with it. It's going to depend on what you're shooting, but for me this worked really well. The camera didn't take the full 8 frames. It actually focused on the foreground and then took 4 shots, and the camera then decided that 4 was enough. That was all that it actually needed to take to gain focus from a close foreground subject to the castle remains in the background. So that worked really well, you know, because obviously the less shots we've got, the less we've got to mess about with in post. So I'm really looking forward now to getting back to the studio and editing these images, and we'll go through the editing process and I'll show you how I blend these images together in Photoshop, and we'll have a look and just see how well it does. So guys, we're back in the studio now, and before we get started with the editing process, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to everybody that's subscribed and commented on the channel so far. I really appreciate that. It's really inspired me to make more videos like this. So if you haven't done so already and you are interested in Fuji related stuff and also landscape photography, then hit the subscribe button and the notification button and you will be notified next time I make an upload. So that being said, let's jump over to the computer and get cracking with this tutorial. Let's do it! So we've got the selection of 4 images that we've imported here into Lightroom. Now to start the process, I've focused the camera down here on the foreground, just on these grasses here, and then let the focus bracketing method take place within camera, and it created these 4 images here. So the first image we've got, obviously we've got this area here nice and sharp, as you can see here. The second image here, we've got the tops of these flowers, which are nice and sharp. The third image here, we've got the midground here. I think it's actually probably in this area here, nice and sharp. And then the final image here, we've got the background nice and sharp. So all in all, it's done quite a good job. If I was going to be picky, I would say this area here doesn't look perfectly sharp. I think it's acceptable. We're at 1:1 ratio at the minute. I think it's acceptable, but I don't think it's absolutely perfect. The cliff here looks sharp, and obviously that's what the XT2 was focusing on when it took the last exposure. But as we come over to the right hand side here, it just looks a little bit soft. But you know, That could be to do with the lens, maybe at 10mm. But anyway, I think he's done a pretty good job of selecting different parts of the image to focus on. So all in all, I'm happy with that. So I just need to do a few basic adjustments to this image before we take it into Photoshop. So as you can see, it's underexposed. So I'm just going to boost the exposure, add some contrast to the image, bring back the highlights a little bit, add in some shadows, and I'm doing this really quickly. I just want to go through this as quickly as possible for you. Now I will take sharpening off. Lightroom always applies the default amount of sharpening to your image when you import it. Now I'm going to take this off because I'm going to do this in Photoshop afterwards. So that's looking somewhere like okay. Like I say, you would play around with this a lot more, obviously. Now I'm going to drop the gradient tool on and just bring that sky back, just to bring some of the details back that we've lost there. So that would probably do it. Now what we need to do is sync these 4 images here. So let's select all of those, hold down Shift, hit the last one and it will select all, or you can press Ctrl A on the keyboard and it will select them all. And hit sync. Now we just need to make sure we check this because we've applied the graduated filter. You don't need to worry about any of those. And just let them synchronize, which takes a second or two. So now we can have a look, and they should all be the same. And they are, so that's great. So once we've selected them all again, we want to right click and we want to edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. So our images have come over to Photoshop now, and you can see they are stacked here in layers on the right hand side. So we want to select all of our layers and then come over to edit and then down to auto align layers. I just keep this on auto for this particular one and click OK. Photoshop will do its thing, and now that's going to align all of those. Do our blend, it will seamlessly blend together. So that's taken place, so that's stage 1 complete. So once you've aligned your images, now all we have to do is come over to Edit, Auto Blend Layers, and Stack Images. Tick on Seamless Tones and Colours. I don't tick the Content Aware Fill Transparent Areas, and click OK. Now as you can see, it's processed layer masks here, which is masking out the areas of the image and blending this image so it's sharp from front to back. So it's done a really nice job. Let's just go and have a quick look. It's looking nice from front to back, so that's excellent. As you can see, there's a white line down the side here, which was created when the layers blended together. So although this shot is you know, a pretty average shot to say the least, it does explain the whole process quite well, because obviously we needed to get this depth of field because we're so close to these foreground flowers, and obviously the background is so far away, but we wanted to get that sharp as well. So what I would do now is just go and crop the image, and I always kind of thought that maybe a 4:5 crop might suit this image a little better. I didn't really want that rock at the beginning there. So something like that. I'm just going to also bring away that white line over on the side there. So I think that's balanced out quite well. We've kind of got a flow through the image here with the foreground flowers, some midground flowers, and then the castle. It doesn't work perfectly on the thirds, but I think it's close. It's close. So that's pretty much it in terms of the cropping. What I would do then is sharpen the whole image, because we obviously took the sliders down in Lightroom. So I'd merge these. You can do this by pressing Ctrl, Shift and E on your keyboard, and then duplicate your layer by pressing Ctrl and J, come over to filter, sharpen, and I use unsharp mask. You can set your amount to whichever amount you like to use. I normally go around 160 and leave the radius at 1, threshold at 0, and hit that. And that's the image sharpened. Now you could go one step further if you want to. I'm not going to do this in this tutorial, but normally I would add a mask and take the sharpness out of the sky, but for this tutorial I'm not going to do that. So let's have a quick look now. It's been sharpened, so yeah, looking pretty good. It's super sharp down here at the front. All the rocks are lovely and sharp. Even that area there now, we have brought some sharpness back to that I was a little bit dubious about before. But all in all, it's worked really well. So that's our image finished. Like I said before, the lighting wasn't perfect for this shot, but I think it served the purpose well, and I'm quite pleased with how it went. I think the whole process is quite straightforward and easy to do. So guys, thank you so much for watching today. Hope you got something from the tutorial, and we'll be back out in the field very shortly with some more landscape photography vlogs and tips and editing tutorials. So see you soon guys, thanks so much.